Hey everyone, in this video, we wanted to talk a little bit about health at every size and basically healthy obesity. And the reason we wanted to talk about this is because, well, recently there's been another kind of image.
Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, another image circulating. That's the cover of Cosmo, the Cosmopolitan magazine, right? And it has pictures of what look to be probably morbidly obese
Not
women
probably, it is.
with the words like "this is healthy," and it just
I mean, it was pretty far-fetched when they were posting pictures that of these morbidly obese Tess Holiday, right? But they went to the point now of just having a cover that says this is healthy.
yeah, that's actually good context. So I want to say like 2 years ago is when Cosmo started doing this, and it started with Tess Holiday, who is a morbidly obese female model. And when we say morbidly obese, I think I calculated her BMI at something like 47. And it started with her being on the cover in like a bikini. And that was a whole issue in and of itself. But now they've actually taken the step to blatantly say this is healthy. And it gets into this bigger idea of the health at every size movement and how, it like really we shouldn't be shaming fatter bodies. They're sexy, they're healthy. There's nothing wrong here. We need to start promoting them for acceptance. And there's a lot of things that are wrong with this message. But let's start by talking about what's right. Okay. The one thing health at every size gets right is that we should not be shaming people based on their body.
No, because when you're overweight or you have a problem, the thing is you shame yourself enough. We don't need external shaming sources because then we reach into maladaptive coping mechanisms to deal with that shame, which is usually eating for people that are obese.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And it just perpetuates the problem. Yeah. But it's the same way. If someone had a problem with like smoking cigarettes, you wouldn't sit there and shame them. You would probably have compassion if they were like, I want to change. They're probably judging themselves on the inside a lot. You need to have compassion for these people.
Well, yeah, and if not, like some people actually actively choose their bad habits, and that's fine too. But they're not wanting to change, and they're not the ones complaining about acceptance either.
Yeah. Ultimately, the bottom line is that regardless of whether you're normal weight, underweight, overweight, obese, whatever, you should be happy, right? Fundamentally, you should be happy. And if you're not happy, then you should change in a way that will facilitate you being happy. And that's why I think the health at every size should change their name to happiness at every size. I mean, they could keep the acronym the same. First word starts with H in both cases, right? But I think it's much more, it's a much more profound message because it truly is about happiness, and it doesn't enter into the very controversial area, which we're going to talk about next, which is the health at every size. That's simply not possible. It's not. I'm sorry. If you're morbidly obese, you're not healthy. Just like if you're anorexic, you're not healthy.
Just like if you're smoking a pack a day, you're not healthy. If you're drinking a bottle of wine every day, you're not healthy. You cannot change science.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we're being blunt about this up front because the evidence is pretty clear cut. Obesity is not even morbid obesity, just regular obesity is one of the strongest risk factors for numerous chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, to name kind of like the three big ones.
Yep.
And once you enter into morbid obesity territory, things just continue to get worse.
Well, and it's not even just that, because people are like, well, all my biomarkers are fine, right?
Yeah.
But eventually they're not going to be.
Yes, exactly. There's this idea
and it's the quality of life, even beside all that, like, sorry, but
yeah,
it's the quality of life. Like, you cannot move around the same. You cannot go play with your kids, your animals, like.
On top of that too, what's being tested? So there's this idea of metabolically healthy obesity. And those are those people. They're like, my blood labs all look fine, even though I'm obese. And it's like, okay, first of all, people like you that don't have insulin resistance, that don't have high levels of inflammation, blood lipids are fine, whatever. First and foremost, it's a transient state, because if you continue engaging in the habits that made you obese to begin with, eventually you're going to pass your personal fat threshold and metabolic dysfunction is going to happen. When researchers compare metabolically healthy obese adults, they're still at an increased risk for hard endpoints like cardiovascular disease, morbidity, and mortality, risk of dying. There was one meta-analysis of 23 weight loss interventions showing that weight loss reduced the risk of premature death by something like 23%, right?
That's
So
pretty substantial too.
that's cause effect. So we know that being overweight and obese contributes to early death, and we know all the mechanisms why by virtue of it contributing to, numerous chronic diseases. Now, some people have healthy labs, sure, they're metabolically healthy,
but so do alcoholics in their beginning stages, right?
Exactly.
Their liver markers look that of what the general
It's a
public
transient
has.
state, and if you continue on that path, things will go downhill at some point. Also worth mentioning that your blood labs don't tell the whole story, okay? Because what's going on, for example, with your joints.
Joints, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you're carrying around all that excess weight. You're at a hugely increased risk of osteoarthritis from joint degeneration from constantly, chronically carrying around those extra pounds. That's not going to show up in your labs. And so just because
that's what I meant by quality of life. You cannot move around the same.
You're going to have lower energy levels,
flow,
chronic fatigue. You might always be hungry because of the habits that you've set up. Yeah.
It's doing more harm by lying to these people and telling them that they're healthy, right? And it's portraying an image on these covers that psychologically condition us as a society to think that's normal. And those RDs out there that are promoting health at every size, they need to lose their license. And I'm not fucking joking about that. Like, what they're doing is very dangerous.
Yeah, it is dangerous. And this gets into the other part of this that we wanted to emphasize is the science about the health of obesity is one part of this. But there's a common counter argument, which is people are like, why do you care what they put on their cover? Mind your own business. Well, we care because there's actually been substantial research into how the media influences public perceptions and behaviors. For example, the weight of the US, I'll stick with the US for this example, the weight of the US has been like chronically creeping up over the decades, right? And so has perceptions, to the point that when you take people from the general population, men and women, and you ask them and you show them different body sizes and you say, which body size do you consider to be normal weight, healthy, overweight, and obese? What you end up with is both men and women thinking that obesity does not begin until someone's BMI is around 37. That's almost morbid obesity. And you also end up with people that are literally obese and they describe themselves as just overweight. In fact, only 10% of people with obesity, when surveyed, describe themselves as obese. And that's because of things like this, because they've
been conditioned to believe that they are normal because their peer group is all the same weight.
Exactly. It's called the visual normalization theory. And that's the issue, is when we put these things on, I mean, first of all, you're surrounded with it in public, so you start to think it's normal, right? And then on top of that, you have magazines saying, this is healthy, this is fine, don't worry about it. Your mindset is going to be changing, especially when you're at a really young age and you're already struggling with your weight. And now everything around you is saying, don't worry about it. That's a recipe for disaster.
Well, and ethically, like what we're doing to these models is super disgusting to me. Like, they are paid to stay unhealthy, so they're paid to shorten their lifespan. That's like paying someone to smoke.
Well, there have been reports of obese models that say, I lost weight. Or what was that one singer? Who was Adele? Adele has been overweight, and
there's another
people
one
looked
that
up
was
to her
recent too,
because she was like obese but successful. And then she lost weight because she's like, I needed to do it for my health. And people were shaming her because they're like, we looked up to you as our obese model. And she's like, I needed to get healthy. Like, it's not healthy.
Yeah, there was another one recently too. I can't remember her name, but people were throwing a fit.
Yeah.
Saying that what she was doing is letting them down.
Yeah, exactly. So now let's talk about the opposite side. Why should we not show obese people, but why should it be okay to show like super thin models, especially fitness models, people that are airbrushed and have unrealistic body composition.
First of all, they airbrush the obese women too. So check yourself. Like that's an airbrushed picture to remove her cellulite and her makeup, do her makeup and her face and her skin tone. So it's airbrushed as well.
Yep.
So it's a poor argument.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, let's ignore that. But then now let's focus on the body composition. Yeah, those people are very lean and
sometimes like we're talking, I haven't seen a lot of like super anorexic models in years on the cover. Like I've seen more healthy size.
Fit.
Well, I mean, their BMI is probably similar to mine, like 22.
See, here's the
23,
thing, is
like,
these people are really lean, but they aren't anorexic or super thin. They either
no one's promoting the anorexic models anymore. Like that was really big in the 80s and 90s, but it's really faded.
Yeah, and people now go more down the fitness route, and these people are healthy. They have normal BMIs. In fact, they might have a little above average BMIs.
And we're not talking about like on Muscle magazines either.
No,
we're talking about general magazines.
Yeah, think of like Men's Health, right? Something like that. Because they have higher levels of muscle mass. That's healthy. Now, do they diet down for that photo shoot to reach like a temporary unsustainable physique? Yeah, a lot of them do.
A lot of them.
And so why is that not an issue, but showing someone who's obese is? Well, because we currently have an epidemic of overweight and obesity in the nation. You could show all these thin people, and that's fine, but it's not going to change people's behaviors, and they're not going to achieve those body compositions because it's so difficult and takes such dedication. That's why these people make their entire careers about it, right?
Yeah, because your entire life it's not normal human
but when
living.
When you show someone with obesity and you say this is fine, this is healthy, people don't have to do anything except maintain what they're already doing.
Except eat to uncomfortable levels.
So the impact is vastly different.
We're supporting a psychological disorder. That's what gets me about this kind of stuff. That is, binge eating is not healthy, and you do not get morbidly obese unless you're binge eating. You don't from chronically like overeating one piece of food every day. You get overweight for sure if you're a short woman.
Yeah, and I mean,
but you do not reach morbid obesity like they are portraying on these covers without a psychological disorder.
Well, I would argue probably class 2 obesity, you can't reach without some binging in there. Yeah, people can become obese by just eating a really crappy diet, like having fast food every day and chronically exceeding their calorie needs.
Especially if they're small women.
But you don't reach like BMIs of 35 and above, what they're putting on the covers without binging. And I would argue that many of the people listening who have been that weight before and who have, now dieted down will admit that, yeah, I would binge on food. And that's what helped me maintain that extraordinarily high weight. I mean, look at like the people in the Biggest Loser study. Like there's a lot of people out there that complain like, well, I'm obese, but I'm only eating 1,200 calories. I'm not losing weight. And it's like, but you aren't. In the Biggest Loser study, that's what some of them said too. And their maintenance was like 3,500 calories. I mean,
which is normal with that mass.
Yeah, when you weigh that much, you have high expenditure. And literally every tiny movement is burning a lot of calories. So, I mean, you need to eat a lot of food and a lot of calories to maintain that. Like, that's just physics.
Yep.
So, anyway, the point that we want to emphasize to kind of just sum up everything right now is that there's a current like health at every size movement. It falls flat on its face because you cannot be healthy at every size. You should be happy at every size.
Yep.
And so they need to change their name, in my opinion, and in her opinion, in our opinion, to happiness at every size. And we got to stop promoting obesity as being normal or healthy, because it's not. And until
this has nothing to do with the people that are obese. They are not less of humans. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that black and white thinking and think that either it's bad to be obese or it's good. And that's not true. Like there's a trade-off. There's obviously benefits, like you can eat as much as you want, but there's detriments too, like your health.
Yeah, and we need to stop fostering an environment that caters to this unhealthy state of being. Okay, just like smoking. Here's the thing. What we're doing with obesity, we're putting it on covers saying this is normal, this is healthy. Guess what? Cigarette ads did that too. They had doctors smoking being like, have a Camel, it's fine, right? And then with smoking, they had areas for smoking. They let you smoke anywhere. It was easily accessible. With obesity, now we're making chairs bigger so that obese people can fit in them. Clothes are bigger. We're literally creating an environment that's like, your weight isn't an issue. And until
we will accommodate you.
Yeah. And we're not acknowledging that it's unhealthy at a population level. And so what we need to do is really take an approach that we did with cigarettes. We said, no more advertising, it's healthy. For every healthy ad, we need to show ads that show why it's unhealthy. And the cigarette companies, guess what? Those unhealthy ads were so effective, cigarette companies actively just stopped advertising on things like TV because it was harming them, since they had to pay for ads that showed it was unhealthy for every ad that was healthy. And the unhealthy ones are way more effective, right? So they stopped advertising. We took away areas for them to smoke. We said, if you want to smoke, you have to go outside. You can't do it on airplanes. You can't do it inside buildings. We're going to have smoke-free sections. We made it inconvenient. And guess what? The amount of people that smoked went way down. People still smoke, of course, just like even if we do all this, people are still going to be obese. But that's
the rates
a choice.
will go down, and it'll become a choice, and not so much thinking everything is fine and it not being. Exactly. It's a delusional reality, and that's
a pseudo reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that was our summary then. Perfect. Awesome. If you like this video, then like the video and share it with someone who you think would also like this information,
especially the dietitians doing
yes, please. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.